wrestling.
He's the greatest, isn't he? No.
Vince bet everything he had on its success, even mortgaging his company's future to fund the event. But it didn't fail. It exploded. That unshakable ambition, forged through years of struggle and a desperate need to prove himself.
And welcome to All American Wrestling and a Happy New Year to you all. This is Vince McMahon reporting.
But Vince wasn't interested in maintaining wrestling's traditions. He wanted to reinvent them. The rivalry between Austin and McMahon became one of the most iconic storylines in television history. Storylines became edgier, the characters bolder, and the energy explosive. Vince McMahon was born in Pinehurst, North Carolina, far from the glitz and spectacle that would later define his life. His early years were anything but glamorous. Raised in a turbulent household and separated from his father, Vince grew up under the shadow of poverty and instability. He would later describe his childhood as a constant battle, filled with hardship and emotional scars that left a deep mark on him. His father, Vincent J. McMahon, was already a prominent wrestling promoter in the Northeast, running the Capital Wrestling Corporation, the precursor to what would later become the World Wrestling Federation. But for most of his childhood, Vince had no connection to that world. He lived with his mother and several stepfathers, one of whom he claimed was abusive. It was a chaotic upbringing, but it built in him an unusual mix of toughness, charisma, and a relentless desire to prove himself. When he finally reunited with his father in his teenage years, Vince was mesmerized by the wrestling business. The energy of the crowds, the drama in the ring, and the raw emotion of the performers lit something inside him. But while others saw wrestling as a niche entertainment for local arenas, Vince saw something far greater. He saw the potential for a global phenomenon. He began helping his father backstage, learning the business from the ground up, how to promote shows, handle talent, and build storylines that could grip an audience. Yet, even at that young age, Vince's ambition went far beyond simply learning the ropes. He wasn't content to inherit his father's small regional promotion. He wanted to take wrestling to every television screen in America. That unshakable ambition, forged through years of struggle and a desperate need to prove himself, would become the driving force behind everything he did. Vince McMahon wasn't just chasing success, he was trying to conquer his past. By the early 1970s, professional wrestling was a tightly controlled world. Not the global spectacle we know today, but a patchwork of small independent promotions known as territories. Each territory had its own stars, its own champions, and its own loyal audience. Promoters operated under an unspoken agreement. You stayed in your lane. Nobody crossed into another promoter's region without permission. It was an old-school system built on handshake deals, respect, and regional pride. The National Wrestling Association, the NWA, acted as a loose governing body, keeping peace between promoters and recognizing one undisputed world champion. For decades, it worked. Wrestling was a local business, passed down through families and friendships. But to Vince McMahon, that system looked like a cage. After graduating from East Carolina University, Vince began working for his father's company, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. Under Vincent J. McMahon, the promotion ran shows mainly in the Northeast, featuring stars like Bruno Sammartino and Bob Buckland. It was a steady, profitable business, but one built to survive, not to grow. Vince Jr. had other plans. He believed wrestling could become something much bigger, a form of entertainment that could rival movies, music, and television. He envisioned pyrotechnics, grand entrances, and storylines that could capture the imagination of millions around the world. When his father's health began to decline, Vince saw his opportunity. In 1982, he purchased the company from his father and took full control. But he didn't just inherit a wrestling promotion, he inherited a code. A code that said you do not invade another man's territory. Vince ignored it. He began buying television time across the country, broadcasting WWF shows far beyond the Northeast. He poached the biggest stars from rival territories like Hulk Hogan, Rowdy Roddy Piper, and Mean Gene Okerlund, offering them national exposure and bigger paychecks. What had once been a regional sport was now going nationwide. It was a declaration of war. To the old promoters, Vince McMahon wasn't just breaking tradition, he was destroying it. But to Vince, this wasn't betrayal, it was evolution. He didn't want wrestling to stay small and regional, he wanted to take it to the world. And in doing so, he would forever change the business and alienate nearly everyone who had built it. By the mid-1980s, Vince McMahon had broken every unwritten rule in wrestling. The territorial system was collapsing under the weight of his national expansion, and the old guard saw him as a reckless outsider willing to burn the business down just to rebuild it in his image. But Vince wasn't interested in maintaining wrestling's traditions. He wanted to reinvent them. He believed the sport could transcend the smoky local arenas and become a mainstream cultural phenomenon. His weapon of choice? Television.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to All American Wrestling and a Happy New Year to you all.
He saw what MTV was doing for music, blending spectacle with storytelling, and realized wrestling could do the same. In 1985, he launched what would become the boldest gamble of his life, WrestleMania. It wasn't just another wrestling show. It was a one-night extravaganza that mixed celebrities, music, and high-stakes drama on a scale the industry had never seen. Vince bet everything he had on its success, even mortgaging his company's future to fund the event. If WrestleMania failed, the WWF would collapse overnight. But it didn't fail. It exploded. The event was a massive success, turning Hulk Hogan into a global icon and transforming wrestling into pop culture. For the first time, wrestling wasn't just a niche sport, it was entertainment. Vince had created a new language for the business, large-than-life personas, cinematic storylines, and merchandise that sold by the millions. Through the late 80s and early 90s, Vince's WWF became a household name. Saturday morning cartoons, action figures, talk shows, his vision had become a reality. But success came at a cost. The company faced steroid scandals, lawsuits, and declining ratings as audiences grew tired of the family-friendly product. The magic was fading. Then came the war that would define an entire generation: WWF versus WCW. In the mid-1990s, Ted Turner's WCW began stealing Vince's top stars, including Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, and Scott Hall, and beating WWF in television ratings for the first time. For Vince, it was personal. His empire was slipping away, and his once invincible company was on the verge of collapse. Desperation led to innovation. Out of this struggle was born the Attitude Era, a raw, unpredictable, and rebellious new direction. The storylines became edgier, the characters bolder, and the energy explosive. At the center of it all stood Stone Cold Steve Austin, the anti-hero who defied his boss, Vince McMahon, now playing the role of the tyrannical owner fans loved to hate. The rivalry between Austin and McMahon became one of the most iconic storylines in television history, propelling WWF back to the top. The Attitude Era didn't just save the company, it reshaped the entire entertainment landscape. Wrestling had become a mirror of pop culture, loud, unapologetic, and irresistibly chaotic. And once again, Vince McMahon was at the center of it all, the mastermind behind both the fall and the resurrection of his empire.